Hey. I can't see the audience. Can you see the audience?
Let's see. We'll check it
Like,
out.
can you see if there's people waiting in the waiting room or no?
Let's see. They'll just get the feed. So looks like we
Okay.
got some people.
So I can start.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us. This series is called AI Adoption and Culture Strategy, Systems, and Execution. And the goal is to help organizations think more clearly about what it actually takes to adopt AI responsibly. So, across this series, Alex and I are going to walk you through the AI adoption lifecycle step by step, starting with business understanding, data preparation, model evaluation, and ultimately operationalization. One of those words I always have a hard time saying. So each episode looks at the stage through three lenses, right? The strategy, systems, and execution. And today we're starting with the life cycle business understanding. So before data, before models, before tools, one thing must be true. The organization has to be clear about the problem that it's trying to solve. And when that clarity is missing, AI does not help. It only accelerates confusion, misalignment, and wasted effort. So today's conversation is going to be about what it has for us to be clear on before AI can be deployed in an organization responsibly. And I keep saying responsibly because responsibly is the operative word there. So this isn't just something that I've observed, it's something I've lived. Early in my career, I rolled out a project portfolio management system to help project managers and leaders make better decisions. And on paper, it was exactly what senior leadership, the executives, and the finance department wanted. Better insights, faster reporting, more data. But then weeks and months later, the tool wasn't being used. Not because the people were resisting the technology, but because I didn't do a very good job, I have to admit, from a retrospective perspective. I didn't do a very good job of really going out and listening to the people that were affected by it. And the system wasn't broken. It's just the project managers told me, they're like, this doesn't reflect how work actually happens, Amervis. This doesn't help me make decisions that I'm responsible for. And so the tool existed, but there was a disconnect from reality. And that wasn't a technology failure. That was a failure to understand the problem, me and my team, that I am responsible for. So I take full ownership of that before introducing the solution. And I share that because a lot of what's happening today with AI, it isn't new. It's the same problem, same pattern. It's just faster now with higher stakes. So companies that are moving really fast, the tools are being released constantly from organizations like OpenAI and Anthropic. We see the powerful AI systems that are entering the market. I get excited. I know, Alex, you're excited. We've talked about our excitement about these tools. But then we see some of the quick rollbacks and the restrictions that need to happen. And some of the examples are just like Microsoft Tay chatbot producing like offensive content. Google Gemini, their image generation being paused due to historically inaccurate outputs. And so the question really is, it's not what's wrong with AI, but the better question really is, what's the problem? Was the problem clearly defined before the solution was introduced? And so here's the micro line. Clarity is the work, AI is the multiplier. So if the problem isn't understood, the technology doesn't fix it. It just scales confusion. And we all love that, don't we? A little sarcasm there. So Alex, when leaders say we need AI, what problem do you think they're actually solving?
Oh my gosh! Before I answer that, I love that. Like AI is the multiplier, right? Like you're always good for those one-liners, Amervis. When I think about what leaders mean when they say we need AI, I think they're often solving the should problem, right? Like we
Yeah.
should be doing this, right? Like everybody else, all my peers are doing it. Like my investors are saying I should do it. So like I need to do it too, right? Like
Yeah.
how are we going to implement AI? God, who was that? Jensen Huang, the CEO
Mm-hmm.
from NVIDIA. He goes the other day. He said, I have a $500,000 salaried engineer, and if he's only using $5,000 worth of token credits, like I'm going to say, what the heck's going on, right? But
Yeah.
if he's not using $250,000 worth of tokens, I'm not going to. I don't believe he's actually doing anything effective. And why would I pay this high resource engineer this much? And that's the exact like should problem that he's trying to solve. It also, NVIDIA benefits greatly if everyone's using AI. So like, let's be fair, like he was trying to do a thing, I think, but that message, it says the same thing that everyone else is thinking. I do it with my own company. I'm like, all right, how can we use AI more, right? Without actually thinking about what the business problem is. But when we start to see why good leaders, why smart leaders are trying to implement AI, they know that there's potential there, right? So they're like, how can I save money? How can I save time? How can I increase quality, right?
Right.
And so those are starting to be the right questions, right? But then, what's our process for getting there? Anyway,
Right.
I have one more story. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. I love your stories.
internal a client of ours was asking for a little bit of assistance, moving some data from one system to a Google Docs to another system. It's an annual process that happens. It's a pro bono client, and the consultant that was on it was like, "Oh wow, I'm going to take this. I know Copilot can do that. Like, it can massage the data and like get it into the right format to import it into this PM tool." And I'm like, "Cool, do it. Like just have fun." And I'm like, treat this as a learning experience, right? Because like the truth is, like, this takes 6 hours a month to like manually give to like some intern to just go and data enter, right? So
Yeah.
this is not solving a business problem for them, right? The ROI of 6 hours of data entry is not worth spending 10 hours or 15 hours to build something that will do this thing over and over again. But if you're learning how to use AI, like, that's definitely worth talking about. But I think what I see with a lot of leaders and a lot of consultants and a lot of everyone, right? Everyone's like, I can build this in AI, right, to solve a problem, but they're not asking themselves, should I build it?
Right.
So,
That's right. I mean, my very first experience with, and I wouldn't call it AI because, project portfolio management systems back in 2003, 2004, I want to say, they were the early versions, right, of the predictive analytics and those kinds of things, right? Portfolio modeling and same scenario, right? Executive director went out, he went to a conference, everybody was using this thing called Niku. He came back, bought it, gave it to IT and said, here, implement it. And then they hired me like 6-7 months later. And he's like, why aren't they using it? And I'm like, you just deployed the tool. You didn't define what the problem was the tool was supposed to solve, and you didn't wrap any process around it.
Oh my God.
So I mean, I didn't say it like that, but so you're exactly right. And what we often see in the news, it makes this kind of tangible. If you take like Zillow, Zillow had the Zillow offers, right, where AI was predicting housing prices for automated buying and selling. And on paper, it seems smart, but they couldn't account for like the local market changes. And the program had to shut down after significant losses. And then even Amazon with their hiring algorithm, AI trained on historical data that reflected male-dominated workforce, penalizing resumes for women. Again, one of those other situations, and we can look at like IBM Watson for oncology producing unsafe treatment suggestions because the data lacked real-world patient diversity. So these are just the patterns that I kind of, every time I hear a news clip, I'm like, oh, okay. That kind of ties to, did they take the time to define the problem up front? Because when the problem isn't fully understood, then AI just amplifies that mismatch between the intention and reality.
For sure.
So those are my thoughts on that.
Awesome.
And so, Alex, where do organizations, where do you see organizations struggle when implementing new technology like AI? What's the usual unclear issue at that point? Like, where do you see bringing it back to you as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with like all tech transformations, right? Like people just like, they aren't being intentional about like the problems that they're trying to solve and like how they're going to roll it out. And it's the same as like a CRM rollout or whatever.
Salesforce, I've been on
Like,
those. Yeah.
it's like, they finally figure out, like companies finally figured out that like, okay, it's worth paying professional services. It's because like, it's hard. It's not just like taking a spreadsheet of like client data and like uploading it into a CRM, right? Like it's like a whole change for the entire company. It's going to change the way that everyone does business. And so you need to be intentional. You need to think about change management and all that stuff, right? And
exactly.
the thing this is more getting into the solution
Yeah.
versus like the
I'm
problem,
always
but I
tempted
will
to
say,
jump in there.
no, because it's like, for me, you can answer it this way, right? Like I like to have three things when, I'm attacking an AI implementation. We do it pretty often now, right? Including internally as well. Like we didn't always have these things in place, right? But like making sure that you have like guidelines and like create an environment for success, and then like actually have some change management around it. Like I think where AI implementations fail is when they don't have those three things. And so like what I mean by guidelines is like, making sure that you have an acceptable use policy, and like, hey, there's all the like, here are the tools that are allowed to be used in our company, and here's how we use them, right? And then maybe even provide training around it, and like create office hours around it, and have a process for like evaluating those things, right? And
Mhm.
like that's the guidelines. Environment for success, like really creating an environment where you can fail and like not be judged for it, or you can fail small and not lose a bunch of money from it, like hosting promptathons and creating prompt library, like having expert office hours, doing things like that. But then like at the end of the day, like after you figure all that stuff out, what tools you're using, how you're using it, figure out what prioritization you have, like making sure that everyone else who gets brought along has had time to understand it, they have time to give feedback, and they have time to adopt those things. Like if you like all of the things, all those tools that I just described fix a lot of the problems that most people have, like not being prepared, expecting everyone just to start using AI even though they didn't grow up as a digital native, all the things, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
how about you?
I,
What are you
I'm
seeing?
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask you back the same question. Like, what are you seeing as sort of like the
Yeah.
challenges?
In my decades long career, as I think about all these examples of like what went well and what didn't, and clarity was missing when it didn't go well. When we do the retrospective, and it didn't go well, clarity was missing in several areas. And the number one I always think of, having done both waterfall, SDLC, and the agile, I'm being an agile practitioner as well.
Yeah.
That whole success criteria, right? Defining,
Yeah.
like you said, how are we going to define success? If this is the problem, and we've done a definition of the problem definition well, then we should be defining the success criteria. And what does that mean? Like I've seen companies say, well, we want to improve the employee experience, or we want to improve the guest experience. And what does that mean? If it's the employee experience, does that mean faster HR responses? Or if it's the guest experience, does that mean faster guest responses, or better engagement, less burnout? I'm joking when I say less burnout, because a yoga meditation will clear that up right away. Yeah. And then I also think of like ownership, right? Who is actually driving the adoption? Who's measuring the outcomes? Like what metrics and measurements are we using? Are we going to say that as part of the problem statement that this is what we're going to watch and see over time, and see, is it going up or down? Which way do we want it to go? What are the risk trade-offs? And I know I tend to speak really fast when I get excited about stuff, but I look at things like what ethical, legal, or operational constraints are in place. Because when I heard about the OpenAI models producing hallucinated legal citations, and like people going into court and using that as a big no-no, it's like, do we define that up front? And like Clearview using AI to scrape images without consent, and the big one is the Uber self-driving fatal accident, exposing like big oversight gaps. And so these gaps are where the confusion and sometimes the harm creeps in. And I'm a big advocate of not normalizing harm, because I know we've normalized as a society, not me as an individual, but as a society, we've normalized harm. And this is an opportunity to address it, right?
Yeah, speaking of legal ramifications, right? Like I think I just saw like I read it as a headline, but I think that it was a Supreme Court case that just that said that you don't have a attorney-client privilege if you use ChatGPT and put something in there. That's now you can that can be accessed by legal now, and that's like just little things like that. Thinking about like how you're using your
That's
clients,
important.
like
That's really important. I'm
it's
glad you brought that
important.
up. That's important for all of us to know,
Yeah.
right? Because a lot of us
Yeah.
are in there thinking, oh, I could just do this, right? And so I'm gonna have to look that up
Yeah.
later. I didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
don't quote me on it. I just saw it come through as a headline. I was like, "Ooh, man, it's
Yeah,
crazy, Wild
I'll do
West
the
now."
research on it.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So talked about how AI needs to be solving some sort of business problem, and we talked about some of the challenges that folks are trying to figure out within AI implementations. Let's assume like we solved all that, Amervis. Like we fixed all that. We got all the perfect change management, got all the
Well,
guidelines,
not
all that
perfect
stuff,
because it'll
right?
never be perfect, but as
It'll
good as it
never
can
be
be, right?
perfect. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Always question if anyone says that they're an AI expert because there's no such thing.
I'm a
But let's say we solve
practitioner,
all
not
that,
an expert.
right? Exactly. Um, what else needs to be in place so that even like the most advanced AI tools, they like help within an organization versus causing harm there?
Well, I mean, I always think of three main like things that need to be in place. Obviously, people is the very first one, right? Because without the people, without the leadership, the frontline users, and governance to understand, the problem and their roles. Sometimes I've been in organizations where I've tried to work with the stakeholders to get folks to understand that it's going to take some time to define the roles and responsibilities. And I know that sometimes people create races and then they go off and put them in a shelf and never come back and refer to it, but you need to have some kind of reference point that you can leverage. And over time you don't need those things because people just get into the rhythm and the cycle of just like sometimes when you get in the car and you drive to your destination, you don't need the map, you already know, right?
Yeah.
So people for sure, making sure that the people aspect of it, the processes, the workflows have to reflect reality, not just reporting or assumptions. Like I shared before, one of my first examples with some of these tools, you have one stakeholder that talks about, well, I just want the capitalization data to come out of the system for the project, so I know what to capitalize. But then the entire workflow wasn't done. Or I've worked at an organization where I was handed over a Salesforce implementation that didn't go well, and 2 million was spent, nothing was deployed. And workflow again is another situation where they only talk to a couple stakeholders and thinking, well, we just want to improve the sales process, but really you want to create a workflow that accounts for the contracting department, the legal department, and all these other stakeholders that are involved in utilizing this new Salesforce tool. So people, processes, and the last one, which I'm just the most aware of as I've analyzed, my experiences, is the governance. What are the ethical guardrails, the risk monitoring, and the success metrics that need to exist? Because if we don't take care of those three things, people, processes, and governance, when you're doing the problem definition and understanding what's going to happen, it just makes it a little bit, you know, maybe not a little bit, but just makes it a lot harder. And so cautionary tales are those like the tape restrictions, this situation. When I watch them in the news, I'm like, I don't know what happened behind the scenes in the organizations, but I always speculate in my head, like, I wonder if it was that these weren't clear enough and the AI, only made the problem bigger, faster. And again, clarity is the work and AI is the multiplier. So if we don't spend enough time on the clarity up front, it just makes it a lot harder, I would say, to navigate. And so there's a balance, right? You don't want to spend too much time in analysis paralysis, because on the flip side, I've been on projects where it's like, okay, we've beat this requirements traceability matrix to death. Like, at some point we need to draw the line, right? And
Yeah.
say we've got enough to at least get moving and start making progress, and not get into the point where it's taking months and months to define one user story, or one concept, right? We have to go, okay, we have enough information and enough guardrails and agreements on people, processes, and governance where we can now start to move. And then we every so often, whether it's every 4 weeks or every 8, whatever cycle you deem is best based on the nature, the size, the complexity, you look at it and you go, okay, the retrospective again, is this working? Do we need to tweak it? Who didn't we bring into the workflow? Who do we need to make the decision at the end when we're at an impasse, right? So those are
Yeah.
just some of my my thoughts on the
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah, for sure. So just to mention a few comments, like really good
Yeah.
comments in the chat right now. If you all are listening live, feel free to drop any additional questions related to this stuff for either Amervis or me to answer. But lots of stuff about like just positive comments about like oversight being really, really important um, whenever you implement AI. And this is a really interesting one from VV Morris. Environments for success aren't always fully funded. And so who's responsible for the evaluation there, right? Like that's
Absolutely.
that's the $1 million question.
Somebody has an idea. It's like, who's got the pocketbook for this? Like,
That's right. That's right. But Amervis, I think, we've talked like theoretically about some of, like how business problems need to be thought about and prioritized before you even go in and you implement AI. Like what are some examples that you've seen of business problem, like where like business problems have been identified
mhm.
and like they were used as inputs for AI? Or do you have any good examples? I've got a few.
I want you to share first, and
Yeah.
then the
Yeah,
one that
yeah.
I'm thinking about might be a little political. So I'm like, if I don't, I'd rather you share because I try to stay away from the
Yeah.
politics of it. So yeah.
No. Like and if anyone listens to my podcast or like hears me talk about AI, like this is one of my favorite examples.
And for
But I
those
don't
of you
think I've
that
ever.
don't know, Alex's podcast is Project Zero. So check it out on
Heck yeah. And if you're a PM, let me know. I'd love to have you on the show. But one of my favorite things, I was at the Innovate Health Conference in Boston sometime in the fall, I think, last year. And there was a practitioner, there was a physician, surgeon who also worked in the administration. And he basically asked the entire hospital, like, okay, where are you spending the most time? Like it was an exercise, like a big New England health system. Where are you spending the most time not with your patient, right? Like doing
uh-huh.
things that aren't directly with your patient. And the oncology department was the place where it really stood out as like, there's a lot of pre-work that happens because there's just so much documentation, biomarkers and stuff like that. You have to look
Mhm.
for risk factors for all the cancer cells and everything. So there's like 80 to 100 pages that on average that an oncologist has to go through before they meet with a patient. And so unlike a lot of other doctors that don't have the time, oncologists spend between 30 minutes and 2 hours, right, doing research before they even step in with the patient. And so they said, this is my business problem. And then now we need to figure out like how to condense that time, give the doctor exactly what he needs. He needs to still be able to look at the documentation, but give him the summary ahead of time, and then use ambient listening, match it up with the pre-work, and then spit out actions afterwards. And they spent 2 years building this thing out, but it was more accurate than the human was, right? And so
Right.
like now they're at implementation phase, and I just think that like I love it as just like that's a really, really big AI project. We're not usually talking about really, really big AI projects. We're talking about little ones, but that one's a perfect example of like a real business problem that is now saving these oncologists so much time. They have more time with their patients. They have more times with their families now, and it solves like the burnout problem and the patient problem, which I just thought it was a
Yeah,
huge success.
I think of that, and you say oncology, and I think of the oncologist that I had, 3 years
Yeah,
ago. Thank
yeah,
God that I don't have to, I mean, you still have to keep in touch, right? Because you have to. But when you say that, I'm like, they say they say what the when they say the problem is, hey, we want to use AI to help doctors make better cancer treatment decisions, right? Because I've
Mhm.
had when I was going, I was having conversations with people about their tech, and like I said, I'm a nerd, right? Right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they're like, well, we want to use AI to help doctors make better cancer treatment decisions, and immediately I'm like, okay, am I overstepping on which cancers, which decisions, based on
that's
what
right.
data quality, like in what clinical context?
Yeah,
And when problems go wrong, right, it's usually because it was aspirational, not operational, right?
yep,
And so
exactly.
the data didn't really match the problems. And I think of another example of where I don't know what the problem was they were trying to solve because it's not public. But and I was trying not to get political, but I think I have to bring up a little bit about the whole, hey, we want to deploy fully autonomous AI, and anybody who's been watching the news and knows what's going on with Anthropic, right? And that whole situation, I don't know enough to be able to say they're suing based on something legit or not. But I'm like, what problem are we trying to solve that we need fully autonomous AI? Because in every AI that I've used, whether it was in a workplace or as an FTE or helping a client as an independent consultant, we always have to go back and say, you need human intervention. I've never seen it work where you just let it go on its own. Think about the hallucinations, right? It goes off and it does something and it hallucinates. And when one of the reporters brought up an example of Boeing, Boeing, Boeing uses the planes. I'm like, yes, but that's a very different situation. They have very detailed specifications that they have to adhere to. And it works because it's been proven over and over. I mean, when we look at this type of AI where we're like, hey, autonomous without human intervention, that makes me nervous, right? That makes me go, okay, what's going to happen in terms of the harm if something goes awry? Who's going to be accountable? Who's going to be responsible? And I go back and think about the people, the process, the workflows. So anyway, not to go off on I'm looking at the time.
No, that one is, no, that's so interesting because it's like the makers of the AI, right? Like what's going on there, right? But I will say, like, pro for Anthropic right now, I have so many pros for Anthropic because I do think that like they, out of a lot of the players, they are really trying to lean in on the ethical side of things. They still have a long way to go, right? But like they are at least trying to do something. So I appreciate that. But oh my God, the report that they just put out, if you haven't read it yet, about like the work impact report, and like my favorite figure on that is like figure 2, where it talks about like all the different areas of work where like the theoretical penetration of AI it's significant, especially in project management. I looked at it and I was like, it's like, wow, like they predict that like 90% of 95% of management can theoretically be replaced by AI, and office administration, again, 85-90% of that can be replaced. I don't know where project management lives. I think it lives in both of those buckets, but right now the penetration is like less than 10% in both of those. And it's like, like what's going on here, right? Like, is AI this like this shiny thing that will fix, will solve these problems, or is it just like a good idea or something?
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah, I think it's something in between for sure.
And I also was like, okay, so before we wrap up, and I also wanted to like, okay, when I think of when AI problem, when I think like, okay, a strong AI problem definition, what is it going to answer, right? And so I immediately think of like, what human friction are we removing, right? If we're going to use AI, what human friction are we going to get out of the way, right? And what decision is being improved, like getting agreement on that, and what does better actually look like in measurable terms. And I'm just recapping some of the stuff I've already shared, but I'm like, and what constraints, right? Trust, context, like which one of these things are real? Because I have to be careful about what I share in terms of the prior projects I've worked on, because obviously I don't want to be divulging a lot of information, but the best ones are the ones where every decision that we made throughout the project lifecycle or the sprint planning sessions, tied back to what was the problem. And I've had people challenge me, and I've challenged people on both sides where we're like, what does that have to do with the problem definition? Like, we define the problem as X. So does that map to X? Yes or no? And if it doesn't, then it's okay. If it doesn't, we have to make a decision on, do we want to now shift, and for good reason. So anyway, so how are we doing?
No, oh my God, we could talk forever. And I want to be respectful of time, and kudos to Amervis, who did not have the link to the StreamYard before until like 4 o'clock on the dot Eastern. So way to jump right in. But anyway, we're gonna do the series. This one's just like teeing it up, talking about like the importance of understanding your business problems. But like, we're really gonna start digging into like all the different components that Amervis talked about earlier, about how you can like practically implement AI across your organization. And like, I'm always looking at it through like the project management lens, right? Like, what framework needs to be there? Like, how can we take you on that journey? You all are the experts at your companies. You all are going to be the experts at your tools. But how can we help you think about like what are the different ways, right? What's the governance? Like Amervis always talks about the governance, like what's the governance that you have around AI? And that's what you'll get over the next, the next few sessions as we go through the series. But thank you so much for joining me, Amervis. And
Alex, real quick, are there any questions in the audience?
Oh yeah, we could definitely cover some questions. I was about to just say that we could
I have so before because I can't see, I'm trying to stay focused and not scroll around on the screens, but I think the main takeaway for today, right? So before you bring AI into an organization, the first step, obviously we've said over and over, is to understand the problem you're trying to solve, right? And if that foundation isn't clear, then even the most advanced tools aren't going to help. And we already know AI just accelerates the solutions, but it also accelerates the mistakes if clarity isn't in place first. And here's what I want those listening to walk away with, right? So you can get it right. We can all get it right. The organizations that adopt AI well, really going to be the ones with the biggest budgets. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. The biggest budgets are the ones that are going to make the best ones. Obviously not, because Alex, you had a really good example earlier of that may not be the case. But the ones that they're not the ones that are going to move the fastest, because that's move fast and break things only works well in certain situations. But they're really going to be the ones that have actually taken the time to slow down long enough to ask the right questions first. Because I think project management, it isn't just 80% communication. It's asking the right questions in those communications, right? And I think that that's not a limitation. That could be a competitive advantage, because if you're asking the right questions, it'll only help you. So everybody already has what it takes to get there. And the clarity is really the big thing, right? Getting to the point where we can ask for clarity and get agreement on what the answers are so that we can build from there. So anyway, I just wanted to share that before, Alex, you let me know if there's any questions for us.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here that I think, we definitely, we can touch on this one, especially Enid. She wrote, how can we be more mindful that at times we prioritize speed over accuracy and ethics? And sometimes we penalize departments or individuals for necessary attention to detail because we want to push things out faster. So it goes along with what you just said, Amervis, right? And
yes, I'm sorry, let me understand the question again. How can we be more mindful of prioritizing speed and ethics,
accuracy and
ethics?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really good question, and I've had that question in the back of my mind constantly. But what did you want to answer that part of it, and then I can share what I think?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I was just gonna say, I think it's really important to think about all the different pieces of what you're trying to achieve, right? Like my company is very focused on having a net positive impact. So doing things faster and making more money is just not what we care about, right? So it's part of running a business, but that's not what drives us. And so we're not necessarily ever looking for speed or maximizing profit. We're really focused on how do we increase our quality and increase our impact for our customers, right? And so I think it really comes down to what are your company values, and it goes back to that governance thing that you were talking about, Amervis. And I don't think it's bad to have a company that just focuses on making money. That's fine. There's a lot of companies that just do that, right? Not that's not our company values, right? And so I think that always looking at any of your technology implementations, whether it's AI or anything else, thinking about it through the value lens is really important. So maybe speed matters sometimes. Ethics always matters.
Yeah,
absolutely. Ethics always matters.
For me, I don't know about for
ethics always matters, right? That's a non-starter for everyone, right? But whether you prioritize speed, quality, accuracy, all that stuff.
Well, I've been in a situation where I'm okay, when everything is a priority, nothing actually is. So we have to be conscious of the decisions that we make. And for me, I'm at the point in my career where I'm ethics is at the top of the list more than speed, right? Accuracy is always important, but I'm not going to compromise ethics for accuracy or speed, right? If we need to take a step back, we will. And underneath what I'm hearing is, how do we move fast without causing harm or losing trust? Because that's what I'm thinking of when you repeated Enid's question. I was that's what I think. That's what I'm constantly saying, is that how do we move fast without causing harm or losing trust? And that's a leadership tension and not a technical one. That's part of the whole, who is the leadership that's in charge? and
Yeah,
what are they prioritizing, and what do they care more about.
exactly.
Because when teams usually go wrong, they treat these like parallel goals, right? Move fast, be accurate, be ethical. And you can't, in practice, they start optimizing speed first. That's been my experience. And ethics becomes a review step at the end where the risk shows up, and then the risk register gets inundated with things that people were trying to raise but couldn't, depending on the environment. Because when there's psychological safety, and again, I'm going to go back to my psychological safety. I am the author of Leading with Psychological Safety. I see psychological safety as interpersonal risk taking in environments. And can you raise risks without being the shock absorber for people who don't want to mitigate those risks? So anyway, I hope that answers Enid's question. And if not, I'm
Yeah.
happy to talk offline as well.
Yeah,
Are
yeah,
there?
yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
I think along with that psychological safety, I think any good AI program, and so Amervis talked and I talked about this before we met, as we were thinking about like formulating this series, and it's like there's two different types of like AI like projects, right? There is the big AI project that I was sort of describing earlier, that oncology project, where there's a lot of people involved, lots of data, and you're building a whole system just for like one specific thing. And then there's like the mini AI projects that are part of AI adoption, at an organization. That's what we're really focused on for the most part, in this series, and creating psychological safety to test, fail, prior make guesses at priorities. Like, no one knows if you're going to be able to build an AI solution that is going to be effective for the business problem that you're trying to solve, right? And so, giving people grace, and the ability to test out new tools, and having it through a structured environment, right, through governance, but like giving people that safety to do that, I think is really important, right?
Yeah, people are watching. They're watching what what is the incentive? Like, what are the risks and rewards for what they share? And
Yeah,
when they incentivize keeping things on the down low, I'm gonna go on the DL,
yeah,
then right, you're not gonna get anywhere. And so ask this before building anything, whether it's a small use case or a ton of small use cases that roll up into a feature or a bigger deployment, right? So what decision is this AI influencing, right? So is it
mhm,
is it low stakes, like a movie, like if if you're doing
mhm.
a Netflix, I think of Netflix and their AI. They've gotten amazing with their AI, right? They're recommending movies now because they've been observing what we as humans are clicking on and watching and doing, right? Or is it high stakes? Is it hiring, healthcare, policing? Because if it's hiring, healthcare, policing, yeah, I'm gonna want to hone in on that one more and be a bigger advocate for that than if it's just what movie recommendation you're throwing up on my screen, right?
That's right.
Um,
That's right. That's
yeah, I
right.
mean, I am also look at, like, there was a time where some of these platforms were making movie recommendations, and then I'd go to the movie theater, and the previews were full of stuff that was not appropriate for children, but I'm going in and taking my kid to see a G-rated movie. Right? It's
Hmm.
like, hey, did you use any AI behind the scenes that you didn't like test and see if this was appropriate? Because if I'm taking a child to see a G-rated or PG-rated movie, and you're throwing up previews of R-rated recommendations like for
Yeah,
25 minutes straight, we got a problem. Like,
that's crazy. Yeah,
um,
yeah,
or who could be harmed, right? If it's wrong or biased, like not hypothetical, but like who could actually be harmed. And
yeah,
then what's the level of error that's acceptable here? Because speed is only a benefit within that boundary, right? So, we're all gonna not, I don't think anything is gonna be 100%. We're gonna expect there to be some error rates, but what is the threshold, right? Is it 75%? Is it 80? Is it 85? Or is it below that? So really good question. I appreciate that. And so,
yeah. Yeah, there's
um,
one more actually, Mervis, if we wanted
yeah,
to hit it
sure.
real quick. Paige asked a great question. I think we can expand a little bit. She said, what are your thoughts on telling AI when a response is incorrect? And is there an importance in doing it? I'd love to answer, I'd love for you to answer that, both when it's incorrect and also when it's doing something that is like potentially like biased. Like, I'm really interested to hear what your thoughts are.
I'm really glad that Paige asked that, because it matters. And I used to go, well, what's the point of my saying anything? And so at a technical level, I think that we're all training AI, like, in a certain way, because our responses will help shape it. And I've asked it, I've corrected it, and the model has adjusted and recalibrated. And I've also asked it. Especially with Claude. Claude seems to be more receptive to feedback. There's more psychological safety with Claude, in my experience, than there is with some of the other tools. But it actually has responded to me and has said that my correcting it doesn't just do like when ChatGPT is like, oh yeah, you caught me, my bad. 1 + 1 does not equal 5. Like, oops, sorry. But I feel like we're helping to shape it for future use. And so I also think it's kind of comical. Sometimes I've sat there and I'm like, as I use, the different tools, Perplexity, AI, Claude, whatever, and I'm like, I feel like I'm in a leadership meeting. And some of the AI responses are like what executives around the table, depending on who the executive is, would do, right? Some of them try to gaslight you. And I'm like, why are you trying to gaslight me? Like, how is an AI trying to gaslight me? And I think it's comical because it is being trained on all of our responses. So if we don't respond, then it's not going to address it. Or at least that's my theory. I could be wrong. I'm hoping that it is getting better and better based on what we as the users respond to. And tell me, was that her question, or did I not?
Yeah. No, I think you nailed it. And the other thing, like I find it easier to address like with my agents than with the holistic, like, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever.
Yeah.
I still think it's important to correct it no matter where I'm, whether it's feeding the model or not.
Yeah.
But I think that is a really interesting thought. And that's why we've started leveraging it more in the agent space, because you can really directly say, all right, like, hey, like, here's your scope and here's right and here's wrong. And it's pretty good. And you get less of that rot that happens, just in general. Usually, yeah, exactly. Yeah, where it forgets stuff, right? And
forgets, that's an understatement sometimes. But for me it's sometimes it's less about correcting and teaching the AI, more about protecting my own discernment. I think, and this could be a whole other series topic, is around like, if I don't challenge it when it's wrong, then I start absorbing information passively, and the tone and like, it affects my judgment. And so those subtle inaccuracies, they compound over time, just like in real life with real humans that we interact with, right? Like,
yep.
If you don't correct them, you start to think you're not enough. That's a whole other workshop framework that I teach on, right? And so I think it's really important that we protect our own discernment, right, as human beings.
Yep.
And that's where, for me, the two sides of it is, one is helping correct it, obviously, for other people. And the other side is remember who the hell I am, right? Pardon the expression, right, for anybody who's offended by the word hell.
No, I love that. I love it.
So
cool. No, so Amervis, do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap here?
Yeah, before we go, I want everybody to know that, Alex and I are committed to walking through this entire AI adoption lifecycle series with you. This is episode 1. There are 4 more coming, and we're still looking to figure out the best schedule. So the best thing you can do right now, if you're interested in learning more, obviously, is to follow both of us here on LinkedIn and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next one when we announce it. And hopefully the algorithm does what it's supposed to do, because I'm like, I don't understand why some people are sending me messages saying, hey, we didn't know you were doing this. Is LinkedIn doing something? I was like, I don't know what LinkedIn's doing, but here's an invitation. Think about, like, what's the problem, the AI problem your organization is trying to solve. And, if you feel comfortable, drop it in the comments. We'll read them. And your questions, might help shape where the series goes. And this is a conversation. Hopefully it came off like a conversation, not a lecture. We do want to hear from you, and we thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode. Alex, did you want to say anything else before we wrap up?
No, that was perfect. I was just going to say, like, if you are interested in getting on the future messages, just comment in this, even if you aren't watching this live, just comment that you're interested in being on the future ones, and then we'll send you a direct invite.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So just, technical solve for the
comment, and we'll make sure you get the invite, because I know I've been sharing with folks like, hey, you get
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Amervis. Really appreciate it. Thanks for everyone. All your questions. I see all more questions dropped in the chat, so we will
We'll
respond
answer
to
them. Yeah.
those. Yeah, and thanks for joining. Appreciate
And
it.
here's
Thank you,
my
Amervis.
crystal heart sign off. I don't know if anybody could see it, but it's my way of sending love out to everybody that joined live or watches it later. And Alex, thanks for the partnership on this AI adoption and culture series. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. See ya.
Bye.